Hello everyone, welcome to yet another day in this The Clown Decade, the decade where things are only going to get worse before they get better. If you want to keep up with all things Clown Decade, please do subscribe to the channel and of course become a channel member. Right, today it is a big story of the week, or multiple stories I suppose, where we just have to come to terms with the fact that we are pretty much a third world country, acting as a banana republic. Nothing works and all your money has to go to the government. Obviously that's slightly hyperbolic, but I am serious when I say the decline is now palpable and, well, everyone is beyond fed up. I mean, I've been fed up for quite some time, that's why I want to drop kick reform straight into government and see if they can't shake things up. Otherwise, quite a few of us may have to look at moving country, but, well, let's not get too depressed and black-pilled on this lovely Friday. So let's just get into the first story. Father of Epping assault victim says government failed his family. The schoolgirl who was attacked by the asylum seeker Hadush Kabatu said she feared he would return to Essex to look for her after his escape, which I don't blame her for. I mean, for a start, Kabatu sexually assaulted two girls, so obviously this is talking about one of them. And I don't blame her for being paranoid. This man is supposed to be in jail for a year, and then when he's served enough time, he should have been earmarked for deportation, which, to be fair, he was. But because our prison services, and I mean this by the way, rely on pen and paper for their records, not computer systems, admin and clerical errors seem to be the norm. Nearly 300 mistaken releases were made for the year up to March 2025. That's ignoring the early release scheme that Labour say that they were forced into, which, to be honest with you, they probably were, because we do not have enough prison spaces. The Tories did not make enough, they made an awful lot of cuts to the prison service, and now we are seeing the results of a completely unfit-for-purpose prison service. I mean, in Liz Truss's book, she was even saying how when she was Secretary of State for Justice, she had to pacify a few prison riots. Because, well, as I say, the prison service is not fit for purpose. Release a load of people, and I don't even need to reference anything in particular. You just look at any Times Radio, Spectator, Daily Tea, whatever. They go into the story of the prison service. Everyone they interview, Vanessa Frake, who's now advising reform, for instance, will just tell you the prison service is just terrible now. It's not surprising that there are early releases that go wrong. It's not surprising that there are accidental releases because it's all done on pen and paper. It's no surprise that things keep going wrong because you either get staff in who don't know what they're doing because there's a high turnover rate and they don't get adequate training, and on top of that, the prison service is trying to hire cheaply with immigrant workers who, just like within the NHS, have the issue of not being fluent in English, and therefore there are, well, problems in translation, we'll say. Ultimately, you get what you pay for, and you can thank austerity for this to some extent, but as I say, the reason we ended up with austerity was to keep the NHS more funded than ever. That is what happened. And as far as I'm concerned, people who treat the NHS as a religion only have themselves to blame. But well done, we've now got criminals, sexual assaulters, violent criminals on the streets who shouldn't be there, so thanks for that. So the father of a 14-year-old girl sexually assaulted by an asylum seeker in Essex says he is disgusted by the government's failure but criticised the violent protests in the wake of the attack. Oh, that's weird. Not that you shouldn't criticise the violent protests that happened, and there were some in Canary Wharf, I remember. I remember some violence in Epping too. And I suppose you just have to do that whenever talking about this subject. It's fine, let's get to the serious stuff. So, Hadush Kabatu, who was jailed for sexually assaulting the schoolgirl and a woman, was wrong... And a woman? No, I think they were both underage. Was wrongly released instead of being transferred to an immigration removal centre, leading to a 48-hour police manhunt, and I covered that in another video. All they do is keep breaking us as a family, like from July, from that very first phone call until now, we've just been really let down relentlessly, time and time again. Speaking anonymously to protect his daughter's identity, he said, "We haven't had a single apology from the government, and we haven't had a single apology or recognition whatsoever. It's just been failure after failure after failure. And, you know, I'm disappointed. More than anything, I'm disgusted." He said his daughter had been getting better until last weekend, adding, "All I can do now is try and pick up the pieces that the government will keep breaking off my daughter." That's such a horrible thing to have to read. I do not want to live in a world like that. I would like to add I've been consistently voting against a world like that, and what's been delivered? A world like this. It's just, life isn't fair. I very well understand that, but I don't know. There's not having kids myself. There is still nothing that quite gets me as emotional as a father just wanting to protect his daughter. I don't think any, and I mean any scene in any cartoon, ever hits me as consistently hard as the "Do It For Her" scene from The Simpsons, where Homer keeps her all the pictures of his daughter Maggie. I know it's a cartoon and all that, but ultimately, from, well, everything I see in life, there seems to be nothing more important to fathers than the safety of their daughters, and, well, this is a man who wants to do everything for his daughter, and the state has basically made it impossible for him to protect her properly. That is what's happened, and that is frankly unforgivable. Because as much as people, and I was part of this, laughed about Kabatu being accidentally released from prison and going on having a manhunt on him that he wasn't even aware of, as funny and as humorous as that situation genuinely is, let's not forget that this has really affected a British family that should not have been affected by anything remotely like this. Anyway, in a written statement given to ITV News, the girl said she couldn't sleep and was so worried he was going to come back to Epping looking for me. I didn't want to be in Epping because I was so scared and I was going to see him and he would recognise me. This isn't the first time I've heard a story about this. The grooming gang perpetrators in Rotherham and places like that, you know, they go to jail for a time and then they're released and back on the streets, and survivors see them in Asda was one famous example. They just see them on the streets and it re-traumatises them. And the same thing is going for this girl here. I mean, it was recent for a start, but nothing would have made her happier, and I mean this, than knowing that he was deported and not coming back. Unfortunately for us, he probably is coming back, because that seems to be the common outcome of paying people to be deported. They use those funds to try and get back. Kabatu's arrest, which came just 8 days after he arrived in the UK on a small boat, prompted a series of protests outside the Bell Hotel. The girl's father said, "I don't condone a single bit of the violence. I don't want any fighting. I don't want violence. I'm not racist or prejudiced. I never have been and I never will. There's been no justice served. Absolutely nothing. 17 weeks from the day he was arrested to the day he was deported. 17 weeks disgusting. There's no justice system. It's such a shame we've been treated the way we have, and we've had no help. No nothing." This is just a father and his daughter crying for help and crying for a state that gives you basic functions. I was going to say a functioning state, but, well, listen to Dominic Cummings. The result of this system is the purpose of it. So the purpose of our system at the moment is basically ruin the lives of British people at the behest of foreigners. Okay, fair enough. They have actually ended up deporting this guy, but they've paid him to. Which a lot of people on Twitter were saying, you know, £500 to get someone deported and not come back, yeah, that's good. They do come back, though. There's actually nothing stopping them coming back. What happens when they come back is that they go back in a hotel, or now they're going to HMOs, and that's causing a load of issues, predictably, because decentralising where all these people are, it means that they can get away with doing a lot. There was a girl raped in a HMO by a couple of Afghans the other week. God knows how traumatised she is, and again, what does the father want? Just to have these people protected, have their daughters protected. But to some level they can be manipulated too, and if they actually want to do something about these men, the state gets in the way of them doing that, despite the state dragging their heels when it comes to actually dealing with them. It's got to be horrible. I can't help but feel bad for men who have daughters these days. Hell, my brother has a daughter. And that's probably what's getting me more emotional about these stories, to be honest with you. Anyway, if this wasn't bad enough, prison service unaware of sex offenders mistaken release for 6 days. Brahim Kador Sheref, I think that's how you say it, a 24-year-old Algerian prisoner on the sex offenders register, was let out of HMP Wandsworth in South London last Wednesday. Oh, we're just mistakenly releasing paedophiles and sex offenders. Nothing to see here. Again, the thing that boggles the mind the most is that basically everyone in the prison service, every expert on the prison service, has said in every interview I've seen, yeah, I'm not shocked by this. There's just no investment in the prison service and it's not fit for purpose. The Tories knew about this, by the way. As I say, Liz Truss's book goes into how there's problems in the prison service that she knew about, and there's just no priority to get it sorted. What is the priority? Throwing illegal migrants into hotels, into HMOs, and now into old military barracks. but not to deport them, it seems, unless obviously they turn out to be an actual paedophile, but at that point it's too late. So the prison service was unaware for 6 days. This has accidentally released a second migrant sex offender who was due to be deported. Oh, there's another one who's to be deported. Incredible. Brahim Kador Sherif, a 24-year-old Algerian who was on the sex offenders register, was mistakenly released from Wandsworth. Times have been told that this was he was due to be remanded in custody for another offence, but was allowed to walk free because of a complete breakdown in communication. Again, this is partially down to untrained staff, some staff that don't speak fluent English, the fact that they don't have computer systems for all this stuff, it's still all done on pen and paper, just completely and utterly unfit for purpose. Officials realised he was on the run on Tuesday when he was due to appear in court, but could not be found. Incredible. Incredible. The only reason they found out is because they actively had to find him. If he wasn't due to appear in court, it could have been months before they realised. Just incredible. Do they not have a register? So the prison service informed Scotland Yard, which began an immediate manhunt, saying that Kador Sherif had been given a 6-day head start, and Lammy obviously was getting an awful lot of criticism over the prison service, releasing Kador Sherif early, and obviously the police being unable to find him. And this comes just 2 days after he introduced stringent new checks for jails. And to be honest, this isn't David Lammy's fault, but he did do an absolutely terrible job at PMQs, where clearly ministers had been briefed on this, because he was asked 6 times by James Cartledge, one of the shadow ministers. I can't remember what he does exactly, but he asked him 6 times at deputy PMQs, can you confirm that no other asylum seeker has been released? And David Lammy started losing his rag. Now, to be fair to David Lammy, he could have said, yes, I can confirm that, because this wasn't an asylum seeker, this was a man who had overstayed his visa. But still, the spirit of the whole thing is effectively, why is the prison service so bad? And again, you can't really blame David Lammy. He's been in the job as Justice Secretary for about a month. But at the same time, you can't mislead the House, and David Lammy just gave terrible excuses as to why he couldn't say this. But to be honest, Westminster drama is not particularly the point of this video, and I really don't care about it beyond just mentioning, yes, that happened. So skipping all the Westminster drama, the Home Office said that Kador Sherif was in the initial stages of deportation process for overstaying his visa. Sherif was remanded in custody for trespass with intent to steal, but was convicted last November of an indecent exposure, after an incident in March 2024. He was sentenced to an 18-month community order and placed on the sex offenders register for 5 years. Why was he in prison if he was doing a community order then? Community orders are specifically non-custodial, so that's a bit odd. The Met Police said it had started a manhunt immediately after it was informed about Sherif's mistaken release at 1 PM on Tuesday. A concierge of a neighbourhood block of Sherif's flat in Tower Hamlets said that police had visited the property 3 times since Tuesday afternoon, including at midday on Wednesday, just as Lammy rose to his feet in the Commons. Each time they stayed for no more than a couple of minutes. Shocking that this guy lived in Tower Hamlets, I couldn't have predicted that. Commander Paul Trevors, who is overseeing the investigation, said it is just over 24 hours since we were informed of Sherif's release. We launched an immediate manhunt and urgent inquiries have been ongoing since. Sherif has had a 6-day head start, but we are working urgently to close the gap and establish his whereabouts. We will continue to use all of the means of our disposal, but we are also appealing to the public's help to find him, and no doubt that, just like with the man from Epping, it will be a tip-off from the public that gets him caught, assuming he hasn't already fled the country. We have seen in the very recent past how important alert members of the public reporting sightings can be. Yes, don't get me wrong, I don't really blame the police for relying on public tip-offs, but there is something about London being the most surveilled city in the world, still having to rely on public tip-offs, that really irks me, considering how much of London being the city of 1984 in terms of surveillance actually can't keep the public safe, despite that being the only reason anyone defends having so much surveillance. Anyway, this article just ends on a high note. The Met has released image and body-worn video footage of Sherif, so everyone actually knows what he looks like. Obviously, if you see him around Tower Hamlets or anywhere in Britain, please do let the police know. Wandsworth also accidentally freed William Smith, the 35-year-old, who was sentenced to a 45 months for multiple fraud offence on Monday and released in error on the same day. Now, that's an incredibly... Again, I don't really want to say funny, just incredibly incompetent, ridiculous situation. The reason William Smith was released was because he shares the same surname as someone else, because like half the people in Britain have the surname Smith. And this other Smith, who was supposed to be reprimanded the same day, did not have a custodial sentence. He had a suspended sentence, and so should have been released. And so they mixed them up, and so released both men because they thought both had suspended sentences. But no, William Smith was supposed to be in jail for nearly 2 years, but just got released because the prison service is not fit for purpose. It's terrible. It needs complete overhaul. Get Vanessa Frake in, she will know what to do. Anyway, on top of all this, police chiefs say prison sentence cuts could trigger crime surge. The National Police Chiefs Council say it is bracing for thousands more offences after the passage of the sentencing bill. Well, yes, we're a bit more lenient on crime, and oh my god, if you're lenient on crime, you get more crime. Who would have thunk? So police chiefs have issued a rare public rebuke to ministers over plans to cut prison sentences, warning that the changes could trigger a 6% surge in crime. Oh, well, crime's dropped by 10% according to Fraser Nelson, so nothing to worry about, at least it's still better. The National Police Chiefs Council said it was bracing for thousands more offences to be committed immediately after the sentencing bill puts more offenders on the streets rather than behind bars. Plans proposed under the bill to ease the prison overcrowding crisis include not imprisoning anyone sentenced to less than 12 months and releasing criminals earlier. Just incredible. It will allow prisoners to be freed as early as a third of the way through their sentence or halfway for more serious offences. And this is another reason that people will be mistakenly released, because it's not as simple as everyone's sentences are cut by half or whatever. It's, well, depending on what they did, who they are, what their sentence is, blah blah blah. All these not particularly clear and obvious rules, people are going to get released early because there will be confusion there. And again, there's not really a computer system. The NPCC said it was concerned at the speed at which the bill, based on a review led by David Gauke, the former Justice Secretary in May, is moving through Parliament. Assistant Chief Constable Jason Devonport of Lancashire Police is overseeing the NPCC's work on the bill and spent 18 months on secondment as a prison governor at HMP Berwyn. Well, what did he have to say? The difficulty we've had is that this bill has moved through really fast by legislative standards. Oh, well, that's quite standard for this government, to be quite honest with you. You've pushed things through, hope they work. Mr Gauke presented his findings in May. We're already now reaching its third reading, moving through parliamentary process. Gavin Stevens, chair of the NPCC, said that without further funding, police would have to make decisions on how to allocate resources, and said officers may have to drop local neighbourhood policing work in order to deal with criminals being released early from prison. Such open concern from the NPCC, which typically avoids commenting on political decisions, underlines the level of unease among senior officers about the reform's impact on crime and public safety. You literally have the police force saying, yeah, no, improve the prison service, don't release people early, otherwise you're going to be overrun with crime. That's the police saying that. The police literally saying we cannot deal with this. The NPCC estimates that the extra strain on policing will cost between 300 and 400 million, but says it is currently an unfunded consequence. In the year to June 25, police in England and Wales recorded 6.6 million offences, a rise of 6%, and would therefore equal around 396,000 additional recorded crimes in 1 year. Like, Fraser Nelson, eat your heart out. I mean, it really does go to show just how much the police and prison service, they really do understand how bad the whole situation is and how badly they are doing, but ultimately they can only deal with the resources that they currently have. As much as they're demanding more, I don't think they're going to be getting more. On top of that, though, police handling of knife incidents before Huntingdon attack under review. Cambridgeshire Police have launched an inquiry after Anthony Williams was linked to a number of incidents in the run-up to the mass stabbing that happened on the train to London from Peterborough, where he stabbed 10 people and amazingly none have died. Like, that is genuinely a miracle. And I imagine this will be a much bigger story if this was a fatal stabbing. But, yeah, the man has been well known for being a maniac with a knife, attacking people for the past 2 days, and then even a month earlier he actually did nick someone's eyebrow in another knife attack. He's a man who should have been sectioned months ago, if not years ago. So Cambridgeshire Police is facing questions after the suspect was linked to a number of knife incidents in the hours before the attack on a London-bound train from Doncaster, and months, days before, he was a serial knife attacker. Anthony Williams, 32, was charged with 10 counts of attempted murder in connection to the train stabbings, as well as a separate count of attempted murder in relation to an attack earlier in the day on a train at Pontoon Dock, DLR station in Silverton, East London. It's another point that people on Twitter I've seen been making. How did this man who, for all we know, is basically just a guy who goes around walking around places with a knife, how was he affording to get the train from Cambridgeshire to London almost daily from the looks of it? And, well, most people's assumptions is that it's from your tax money. He is also being investigated over 2 incidents to visits to a barbershop in Peterborough in which he allegedly brandished a knife, and in relation to the stabbing of a 14-year-old boy. Oh yeah, he stabbed a 14-year-old, just, why has he not been arrested and in jail? Because our prison service and our police service are not fit for purpose. They need an incredible amount of investment, and they also need to stop sending 6 officers to people's houses for annoying local schools. Darrell Preston, Cambridgeshire's Police and Crime Commissioner, said he had asked Simon Medjicks, the county's chief constable, to review the local incidents that occurred prior to the mass stabbing. Medjicks said he had commissioned an internal review into the events and welcomed this additional scrutiny. I would imagine you would, because if you didn't, then it would raise too many questions as to why you're not arresting people who run around the country with knives. On Monday, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, said to Parliament that the public would have many unanswered questions about the event that led up to the attack, and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, told The Times, "We need to understand if there were opportunities to apprehend Williams arising from incidents in the Peterborough barbershop." Of course there were. He stabbed a 14-year-old boy. What do you mean? Of course there were opportunities to arrest him. Answers to these questions are urgently needed. No duh. I would not be shocked if this inquiry once again comes up with, "Oh, sorry, didn't really want to arrest him, he's black." Same thing happened with Axel Rudakubana with the Southport stabbing, by the way. A head teacher was basically told, "Don't be racist," when this head teacher said, "Oh, this Axel Rudakubana, yeah, he's an absolute psychopath and I'm genuinely scared of him and he needs sectioning." Care worker said, "Can't do that, he's black." Unironically. So Cambridgeshire Police referred itself to the Independent Office for Police Conduct, as is typical in these cases in terms of their reaction to the stabbing of 10 people on the train. The IOPC, however, said it would not be investigating the incident as it did not meet criteria for a valid referral. And this is because, frankly, the police actually did react quite well on the night itself. They were there in a very timely fashion and did actually manage to arrest the maniac, along with another black guy who they later released because, he was misidentified. Preston added, "As a result of the IOPC decision, I formally asked the Chief Constable Simon Medjicks to conduct a thorough review of events which occurred prior to the tragic events on Saturday evening. The findings will be discussed publicly at an upcoming Police and Crime Commissioner accountability meeting once the internal review is complete." Medjicks said on Tuesday, "Yesterday I commissioned the internal review of the events which occurred prior to the tragic events of Saturday evening. I recognise the impact this incident has had on all our community, as well as put additional visible patrols across the county." Okay, why are there not already additional... why is it not a baseline to have many patrols to the point where if someone does turn up at a barbershop, there is police quickly there to arrest said man at a barbershop with a knife? The Force said on Friday a boy was stabbed by a man at 7:10 p.m. in Peterborough city centre, in the city centre, which is where your police presence should be. About 15 minutes later, a man with a knife was alleged to have visited a barbershop in nearby Fletton. The incident was not reported to police until 9:10, and police did not send officers because of the delay in reporting the incident. What? I mean, to some extent, I can understand the police reaction to that, but ultimately, I think the police should be investigating literal stabbing incidents that presumably end up with a member of the public in hospital. But I guess we'll have to see the review to that. Anyway, there's one more thing I want to quickly mention, and that's, it's related to the Anthony Williams case, because an awful lot of official reports on this were calling him a British citizen and making sure that everyone knew he was a British man. Obviously, this is to try and, obfuscate between a native stock and those we'd expect to be integrated. And believe it or not, I don't particularly think someone who goes around stabbing up trains and 14-year-old boys in city centres should necessarily be considered part of the integrated stock we have in this country. But this guy's probably going to jail for the rest of his life, and if not jail, certainly a mental health institution, so really does it matter on this front. But it was reported that a Briton was wanted by Germany over a Hamas-linked plot against the Jews. The suspect faces extradition after he was allegedly spotted by counter-terrorism police meeting members of a terror cell. Now, the thing I have a problem with here is Briton has a very specific meaning, and it literally means someone of the native stock. The implication of this headline is that this is not just a British citizen, this is a man who has lineage in the country that goes back a fair number of generations, let's say 5. So there's a 39-year-old suspect who was arrested on Monday after the National Crime Agency received a request from the German prosecutors. The man can't be identified for legal reasons, but according to the title, we can at least, well, we have to assume that he is a white man who is a British national, and not just that, a British native. If it turns out that he is not any of these things, then the title is inaccurate, and once again, this is bastardization of language that I'm getting fed up with. Words have meaning, and trying to water down what it means to be a Briton, to be British, is very, very irritating. If anyone thinks that this is me being an ethno-nationalist, it's not. I thoroughly believe that integration is a real thing that really happens. I've literally seen it happen with my own eyes. But the distinctions between a Briton, a British national, and a foreign national are 3 things that I really want to make clear. You can be a British national without being a British native, obviously. In fact, there are probably too many people who are British nationals who are not British natives, who we've given out citizenship to and probably shouldn't have. Such as the man who stabbed up the synagogue a few weeks ago in Manchester. Anyway, he appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court in central London the same day and was remanded in custody, and will appear again via video link on November 10. Counter-terrorism police in Germany became aware of the man in June during their investigation into a suspected terror plot. ITV News reported, and he is accused of overseeing the transportation of firearms into a country and allegedly met a member of the terror cell while under surveillance. The development came 1 month after 3 men were arrested on suspicion of preparing acts of violence against Jewish targets in Germany on behalf of Hamas. The terrorist group has denied any connection to the 3 men. The thing is that this could actually be a native Brit. It could be a ginger man for all we know. But I am very suspicious of this. It's just the thing is that if you can't identify the man for legal reasons, say British national rather than Briton, because Briton is somewhat helping identify him. 2 of the suspects were German citizens, like that, German citizen, not Germanic people. And a 3rd is a Lebanese citizen, I take it that means. All are accused of having procured firearms and ammo since the summer to allegedly be used in an attack, according to Germany's Federal Prosecutor's Office. The men named Abdel Al-G, YLFM and Ahmed I are in line with privacy laws and were arrested in Berlin on September 30, the day before Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. Raids took place in Leipzig and Oberhausen after the Berlin arrests, Der Spiegel reported. So, if we have an Abed, a YL, and an Ahmed, I'm going to assume that this Briton had a beautiful British name, as Al Murray would put it. Yes, I don't think this guy is a Briton. I'm just going to throw that out there. I do not think that this guy is an actual Briton, and it's bothering me that while thankfully we are getting identity releases earlier and earlier when it comes to terrorist attacks, every time it is a British citizen, they are trying to conflate it with, oh, it's someone who's integrated. No, that is not what is happening here. What the stories really are behind all this is that we have given citizenship out to far too many people, and there will need to be reviews on it. But I think that is a conversation that we are unfortunately a few years off from the mainstream, but it's just getting mad. Anyway, I think with that we will leave that video there. Sorry for blackpilling you on a Friday, but if it's any consolation, I'm going to make up for missing yesterday's video with something hopefully a bit more white-pilling tomorrow. So, with that, thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. On top of that, you can also, of course, become a channel member and leave super chats and super thanks. With that, it's shill time. I'm afraid there is a 2-week hiatus on Tosh. This is largely because, well, family comes first, and my brother's invited me to a couple of days of playing board games online with him because, you know, fun. I'm sorry it's not something more important, but ultimately, you know, you've got to keep these relationships with your family up. But we will be back to regular programming later in November. But in the meantime, we will still be playing Deus Ex Human Revolution on Wednesdays, Wolves of Westminster out on Fridays, next episode out later today, and Laughing at the Guardians next Saturday. There we go, that's everything. Videos out as and when I can make them. Obviously yesterday was the day I couldn't, but I will try and make up for it. Right, with that, thank you all very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.